Hey guys, let's check out the romance fantasy preference of men and women a la Gemini because I can't be bothered to get B-roll, and also you can see that I'm impartial here. So I'm not trying to land the ball in either court. I keep in mind these are broad generalizations, but they are pretty damn correct. And especially if you're a guy who's trying to read, well, basically any book, but especially fantasy kind of books, you're gonna run into a lot of romance fantasy. So either you want to avoid that or just be ready for it. And sometimes it can be really obvious that it is, because you see like a 8 feet tall, white, muscular guy on the cover who's holding his 4 feet tall girlfriend. Of course, he has no shirt. Other times, not so much. So, women romance fantasy is usually from her perspective, very much so, and her personal growth is often deeply intertwined with the development of the romantic relationship. In fact, the romantic relationship is often the main storyline, or at least one of the two most important plot lines alongside the fantasy conflict. The external plot often serves to bring the romance leads together or test their bond. Yeah, that's a good point. I've unintentionally read a book or two like this, and basically like 90+% of it was just romance. She literally did nothing. She didn't go any adventure. And happily ever after, or happy for now, is usually expected and preferred. An interesting point is that focus on deep connection, vulnerability, longing, and the emotional roller coaster of falling in love. Now, of course, we need to contrast it to what the guy romance is, but I can already hint that the roller coaster is not part of it. And one archetype would be the book boyfriend. The male love interest is often powerful, protective, perhaps morally gray. Yeah. Cinnamon roll but could kill you, or villainous but only for her. He often designed to be appealing to a female readership. Common tropes: enemies to lovers, fated mates, slow burn, forced proximity, who did this to you, touch her and die, hidden identities, one bad fake dating. It's interesting how much of it is kind of forced, which is kind of a big contrast to what a guy's story tends to be. Because agency tends to take a central aspect. And regarding power dynamics, often features a dynamic where the female character might initially be less powerful magically, politically, physically, but grows into her power, often with the male love interest support or as a challenge to him. So the fantasy is that the guy is stronger, although she might fantasize about getting stronger too. The male love interest is frequently an alpha type figure, but his dominance is often tempered by his devotion to the female male character. So the guy is expected to be extremely dominant, arguably immoral, but also sweet on the girl. And some of you might say like, oh yeah, morality is so good. Well, the thing is, if you have someone who has your back, or supposed to have your back, and their morality gets in the way, but also you have to understand what morality is. Because morality is just something others tell you to do for them, essentially, or your own feelings that you call morality. But essentially, it is just all preference. And others want you to adopt their preference. So if someone tells you to turn the other cheek, but they like punching, then what are we even talking about here? Or you have a brutal dominance hierarchy, but they tell you to be good, then what are we talking about here? So it's not necessarily about not having standards, but if you have standards against those who don't have standards, you will die. And effectively all brutal systems and high stakes kind of lead to a race to the bottom. So, and the unfortunate realization also is that what we might call morality might not extend to all, because if you even look at the word good, I mean, something might be good for you, but not good for others. So the guy might be expected to moral to the girl, but probably not moral to her enemies, if it actually matters. Of course, if it's some kind of a token act, then maybe you can just show that you're the bigger man. But let's keep going. World building and plot. World building, magic system, political intrigue are present and can be intricate, but they often directly facilitate or complicate the romance. Yeah, that's such an interesting aspect, although interesting is definitely not the word I would prefer to use, that there's usually just drama or just petty rivalry. Stakes can be high, saving the kingdom, defeating a Dark Lord, but the emotional stakes of the relationships are equally, if not more, critical. And regarding sexual content, from closed door, fade to black, to highly explicit, spicy, smutty, when explicit, there's often a significant focus on the female male character's experience, desires, and pleasure. And just to show that these are actually very, very popular, so I don't know about Akotar, but let's search for Throne of Glass, and we can see that this has over 2 million ratings. 2 million. That is insane, by the way. Because the books I tend to read on the regular, I think on average, my books tend to have like a few thousand ratings, right? If even that. Maybe it's in the hundreds. At least I'm emphasizing that this is not niche. But let's go to the guy romance fantasy. Usually male, the story is told from his perspective, his goals, ambitions, and challenges are central. Right. It almost kind of comes off as like a power fantasy first. Emotional arc, less central, relatively. While he might experience emotional growth, it's often secondary to achieving external goals, defeating the villain, mastering his powers, fulfilling prophecy. The romance might be part of his growth, but not always the driver. In fact, there are a lot of guy stories out there that don't even include romance, which is self-evident, but the point is they just kind of focus on this aspect of like, I get good, I win. And these stories are quite appealing to guys, apparently. And regarding the centrality of romance, romance is often a B or C plot, though it can be very important to the character motivation. It's less likely to be the driving force of the entire narrative compared to romantasy, which would be a female romance fantasy, I suppose. And although happy ending is preferred, sometimes the romance is tragic or unresolved to serve the larger story. Yeah. But let's just check out the love interest. Romance might be expressed more through acts of service, loyalty, protection, or shared adventure rather than deep, prolonged emotional introspection. So you can see that there is a sharp contrast between the two. And the ideal partner for him, the female love interest, might be a capable companion, someone who supports his quest, a damsel to be rescued, less common, but a classic trope. Yeah, that's interesting because if a guy rescues some peasant girl off the street or just near the roadside, and that could be a female romance, a female love interest. But that almost certainly would not be the case if you ever read any, well, maybe unintentionally, some kind of female romance fantasy or saw it, because that guy would be not worthy of consideration if they need to be rescued. They would be just weak. Or a powerful figure in her own right. Her appeal is often tied to her competence, loyalty, or how she complements the hero. There is like a lot of variety. Childhood friends to lovers, common tropes, love triangle from his point of view. Yeah. I think that's important to point out because female romance fantasy might include the really cool guy that she likes, but also a lot of other women who bicker over that guy. And guy romance fantasy really does not have that. At least in general, from what I can tell, from the extent I engage with it. So otherwise said, in female romance fantasy, if other girls like your guy, then you become more interested in that guy. But in guy romance fantasy, if other guys like your girl, then you become less interested. If not lose all interest altogether. Also, we got Forbidden Love, Saving the Princess, the loyal companion. She's the one who understands me, right? Also, we got the harem subgenre, a distinct subcategory where the male protagonist attracts multiple female love interests, often fulfilling a power fantasy. Emotional depth per relationship can be shallower, right? Although I would say this trope is pretty okay too, because at least they all kind of get together instead of kind of dragged around like what you would see in like female romance fantasy. No doubt, I'm saying this as a guy because she tends to be only interested in the top guy, but she will not hesitate whatsoever to drag around other guys or have them as a backup, although it does vary. Power dynamics. The male main character is often on a hero's journey, gaining power. The female love interest might be powerful allies, objectives, or source of information. In harem scenarios, the power dynamic heavily favors the male protagonist. It is interesting that the guy prefers to be stronger, and the woman also prefers the guy to be stronger. And regarding the world, intricate world building, complex magic systems, political maneuvering, epic battles often take precedence. The romance fits into this world. Usually focused on grand external threats, the romance is part of the hero's personal life with this larger conflict. And sexual content can be non too explicit. So I'm not really sure how that compares. So a quick comparison would be the primary focus is the female protagonist's emotional and romantic journey, while male protagonists focus on goals and quests, and romance as a subplot. Romance centrality is very high, often D-plot. This is really annoying to me as a guy. Of course, it's not for me. While in contrast, the guy would be moderate to low, often A-plot among others. And emotional depth would be emphasis on internal feelings, longing, connection, while the guy would be more emphasis on actions, loyalty, and shared goals. So it's primarily like a power fantasy. Love interest, book boyfriend, often protective, morally gray. Okay. While the guy love interest would be capable companion, supportive partner, and an objective desire. And power dynamic-wise, the male character grows in power, but the male love interest is initially stronger. And this is pretty prevalent, right? While the main male character, or the protagonist, gains power, female love interest role varies, ally reward. So a guy might just find some homeless woman off the street and now they're love interest. This is likely to be a romance for the women. And world building would be serve the romance and the character arc for women, and for guys, romance fits within a pre-existing detailed world. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even, if romance is extremely high, is the plot, then it doesn't even leave room for that fantasy world. Or it's gonna be very basic. And sexual content can be explicit, often focused on the female main character, while the guy would be either kind of mutual, it can be focused on the main character, but from what I've read, I think it tends to focus more on the women too. And expected outcome is that the happy ending is crucial for the women. For the guys, you want the happy ending for the plot. and romantic happy ending is a bonus. But oh boy, we are going in deeper. Women romance fantasy, aka romantasy, fairy smut, my morally grey king. This genre often feels like it's written by women, for women, about women finding their ultimate, often problematic book boyfriend amidst magical chaos. And the main character would be, often starts as ordinary, but is secretly the most special girl ever, chosen one, hidden powers, unique lineage, can be plucky, not like the other girls, a bit clumsy, or surprisingly sassy despite her tragic backstory, spends a lot of time internally monologuing about the male love interest. Her personal growth is 90% tied to him, and her burgeoning powers that conveniently impress him. Keep in mind that women write this. What she's attracted to in the male love interest: power. Raw, untamed, often ancient power. He can level cities, command shadows, or has wingspan that requires double doors. Also, danger and immorality. He's a walking red flag factory. A general, an assassin, a century-old Fey lord with a body count longer than her to-be read pile. Morally grey often means he's a genocidal warlord, but he's our genocidal warlord, and he's got great abs. And possessiveness, obsession, disguised as devotion. Touch her and die. He's insanely jealous, tracks her movements, makes grand, world-altering decisions based entirely on her. This is framed as peak romance, not a restraining order waiting to happen. And has a hidden soft side only for her. He's a monster to the world, but with her, he's a secretly vulnerable cinnamon roll who just needs her love to heal his ancient trauma. And his physical characteristics would be physical perfection, often with specific tropes: tall, dark, and brooding. wings, fangs, tattoos, scars that tell a story. Basically, a finely sculpted god who inexplicably falls for her. And banter and tension would be, he's infuriating. They hate each other for like 5 chapters, but the section tension is thick enough to spread on toast. And this is usually not what the guys like. The guy romance could be like, hey, I just met you, and you love me, right? I was like, yeah, I love you. Now and forever. Like, okay. I'm just checking. Yeah, I just want to make sure. So now it's us against the world. Are you in? Yeah, of course I'm in. And the male love interest would be often alpha hole. Huh? Alpha asshole? Is that it? It's not a good title. It's not a good way to call it. The whole part is kind of misleading. Anyway, arrogant, dominant, powerful, emotionally constipated, but secretly yearns for connection with her specifically. His entire ancient existence often boils down to waiting for or finding the female male character. Isn't it a little bit but a turnoff that this guy cannot find any? What else, really? But it's gotta be the female main character. Because that kind of goes against power. Whatever. His personality, beyond brooding and obsessed with female main character, can be surprisingly thin. He doesn't need any other character traits. And what he's attracted to in the female main character, her spirit, feistiness. She talks back to him. I don't know. No one has ever dared. This is apparently irresistible. Her special trait is that she's annoying. Her uniqueness. She's not like the other girls, even if she exhibits many common tropes. Fated mates, prophecy. Often there's a magical bond forcing the issue, conveniently making his obsession destiny. That's kind of interesting in contrast to the guy one, because you would value agency more. At least the guy romance tends to value agency more. So I happen to know some romance fantasies where the female love interest or the female main character gets married to the guy early on, so it's kind of like a forced bond, you can say that, but then they grew to like each other or something like that. And this was explicitly written for women. Her hidden potential. He sees something in her no one else does and wants to unlock it and her. Okay. What is even that though? I guess it's just nonsense. You just say like, hey, you have something no one else does, and I so much believe in you. No one loves you more than I. A challenge initially. He's bored, she's new. Cue intense focus. Right? Is that really an appealing part though? Because like the guy's bored. The plot often serves as an elaborate obstacle course to get the female main character and the male love interest to bang, admit their feelings, and then rule together. World-ending threats are serious, but not as serious as whether he truly loves her. Who cares about the end of the world? Okay, let's check out the guy romance. The hero. Who he is, the hero. Could be a farm boy destined for greatness, a grizzled warrior, a cunning mage, or an isekai dude who's suddenly OP. His primary goal is usually saving the world, gaining power, or fulfilling his destiny. Romance is a perk, a motivation, or a reward. What he's attracted to in the female love interest. Beauty and grace. She's often described as ethereal, stunning, the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. Classic. So she's hot. Competence. That complements him. She's a skilled healer to patch him up, a wise princess who needs his strength, a fierce warrior who fights by his side, but is still the main hero. Okay. So I see compatibility here, but also it is kind of problematic because the guy wants to be stronger and the woman wants the guys to be stronger, but what if that is not the case? Loyalty and support. She believes in him, supports his quest, and is his emotional rock. Right. But needing an emotional rock itself could be a sign of weakness, I suppose. But I guess she is the only one. Or maybe this is not a female romance fantasy. But let's be fair here. Guys have emotions too. And if you look at the world as like, everyone's competing against you, it is kind of nice to have someone who has your back. A bit of a prize or goal. Winning her affection can be part of his hero's journey, proving his worth. Right. Yeah, this is one aspect that you would not generally see that much in women-oriented romance fantasy, is that the guy wants to be someone who proves themselves in the world. Or maybe they are on some kind of journey. While the woman one might not be on that much of a journey in itself. Although she might get better, so to speak, but that usually is a minor concern. In a harem fantasy variety, he's attracted to the shy one, the tsundere, the mature one, the cat girl, basically a buffet of female archetypes who all inexplicably adore him. It's less about her specific deep individual trait and more about how she fits into his collection of admirers, right? But it does show that it is broader than what you might see in women romance fantasy. Also, while one might want amoral and dominating, the guy one is more like supporting. And if you do that, you're basically in. But let's look at the female love interest, the hero's companion / reward. Who she is often exists in relation to the male protagonist. She might be capable and have her own skills, but her emotional arc often revolves around him. In harem, they are often walking tropes whose primary character trait is in love with the male guy. Nice character trait. I was confused about what NPC means here, but apparently it means male protagonist. What she's attracted to in the male protagonist, his strength and heroism. He saved her village, the kingdom. He's brave, strong, and decisive. His goodness, nobility. He's a good guy, fighting for the right reasons, even if he's a bit rough around the edges. He's potential, destiny. She sees the great man, or he is, or will become. In harem fantasy, him being the protagonist. It's hot. Honestly, sometimes it feels like they are attracted to him just because the plot dictates it. He's the center of their universe. He's often inexplicably kind or understanding in a way that makes multiple women fall for him simultaneously. It is worth saying that many of these stories would not work unless the main character would be just powerful. Inexplicably, in this case. Because even if you're like a regular Joe and you try to get strong, I mean, you gotta be realistic. But oftentimes in these kind of stories, the male protagonist is really strong, really powerful, and that leaves them a lot of room to be quote-unquote good. Because if you were just a farmer, you cannot be good in a sense that you have a lot of room. You can be a good farmer, I guess, if you would call it that. But that most likely would not make you a hero in your eyes or in the eyes of others. And the plot would be the main fantasy plot for quest, political intrigue is front and center, romance is woven in, sometimes as a vital motivator, sometimes as a pleasant side effect of being awesome. In harem, the plot can be about acquiring more party members and love interests. So it can be like Pokemon with women. What if I made a game where you have one guy who goes around the world of naked women who catches them with his balls? Maybe it needs work, but I think I got something. And summary of it would be women romance fantasy often centers on the fantasy of being utterly life-alteringly desired and cherished by an impossibly powerful, dangerous, and hot individual where the woman's emotional journey and desirability are paramount. It's about the intensity of being chosen. While guy would be often centers on the fantasy of the hero, winning the admiration and affection of desirable women as part of his journey to power and success, or simply being so inherently awesome that multiple women are drawn to him. It's about the achievement of being desired. Interestingly, the power imbalance can be quite stark. Because if we even didn't use books here, but you can look at popular movies that could be argued that are women romance fantasies very fairly, like Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey, then you see that the woman is essentially being, well, just useless, right? She is a total plain bagel. She doesn't know anything. She cannot do anything. But of course, she's thirsting over some great guy. And of course, it is mutual. And possibly special interest goes to like 50 Shades of Grey, although I wouldn't want to necessarily generalize based on this particular one, is that She imagines that the guy wants to do some kind of BDSM or whatever that is, even though it is her own fantasy. So there is a good chance that women romance fantasy would be spicier, to the point if you send some harvesters, they would choke. And if we had some book burning, I definitely would be against that. But if we just had to have it, then I certainly would nominate those books. But let's just go more into detail about how the romance plays out and who gets chosen. So here, the selection process is often less about a checklist of desirable traits, though those exist, and more about an almost cosmic, fated, and deeply emotional pull, frequently wrapped in layers of conflict and power dynamics. Conflict is an interesting element because guy romance doesn't tend to have it. In fact, the less conflict, the better. Now let's just see. The irritating, captivating factor, enemies to lovers, rivals. He's arrogant, infuriating, challenges her at every turn, and she can't stop thinking about him. This constant friction creates sparks. The desire isn't for a peaceful life, but for someone who sees her, spars with her, verbally and literally, and makes her feel intensely alive. The eventual yielding from her hate to love feels more earned and passionate. Being desired by someone who initially seem unattainable or adversarial, the thrill of conquering or being conquered by a formidable opponent, the idea that intense initial dislike masks an even more intense underlying attraction, is the underlying fantasy here, apparently. Another one would be the terrifyingly powerful yet strangely attractive allure. Why? He's a walking VMD, winged male devastation, perhaps? Isn't that like weapons of mass destruction? Capable of unspeakable acts, but his ferocity is, or becomes, directed outward to protect her. She might be scared of him initially, but she's even more terrified for him, or for what the world would do without him once he's on her side. His power makes her feel safe, even if it's dangerous kind of safety. Underlying fantasy, having an ultimate protector, someone so overwhelmingly powerful that no other threat matters. The taming of the beast, or being the one person he'd never hurt, right? But what if they fucking snap? Or this relationship grows cold? I guess that's just never gonna happen. The he sees the real me connection. The female main character often feels misunderstood, underestimated, or burdened by expectations. The male love interest, despite his own flaws or gruff exterior, possesses an uncanny ability to see her true strength, her hidden pain, her potential. He doesn't just desire her beauty, though that's usually there, but her essence. Underlying fantasy would be being deeply understood and valued for one's authentic self, especially by someone who matters. Right? The last part does matter here. But also, what authentic self, I would argue? Because we are just instinct and basically others programming. So there's no authentic self. Maybe I can say that my authentic self is desiring to drink water. But otherwise, I'm just like a vortex, like a soup of ideas others kind of made me to be. The forbidden, fated, or soul-bounded inevitability. Why? Magic itself often dictates the connection. Fated mates, soul-bounds, prophecies, these remove the mundane aspects of choice and elevate the romance to something epic and unavoidable. Even if they fight it, the universe or the author is pushing them together. And the underlying fantasy would be that the romance being meant to be, divinely ordained, and therefore inherently more significant and passionate than a regular Tuesday night Tinder date. But it's kind of forced. Is that good, though? I kind of wonder if that is part of the appeal of marriage. And even though I do see that, of course, people make this choice voluntarily, but marriage itself kind of forces people to stick together, right? Not like, okay, I guess we're just not getting along, so bye. Well, it could also serve as kind of like a cost signaling, because if the guy makes sacrifices or something that is clearly against his interest, and he would clearly not do it unless he was stupid, or you can call it in love, then that is romance. The vulnerability beneath the armor appeal. The male love interest is often emotionally scarred, stoic, or closed off. The female main character desires to, and often is the only one who can, break through those walls. Yeah. Glimpses of his past, pain, his secret fears, or his unexpected tenderness make him more than just powerful figure. They make him more human, even if he's a fae, vampire, dragon, and relatable on an emotional level. But wouldn't that really mean that suppose someone did this to you, and suppose this was their fantasy, then after that they might lose interest? So at that point, you might as well be just Fort Knox. Like, I'm not giving out anything. But I suppose that wouldn't be the fantasy. Underlying fantasy being the key to someone's emotional healing, the power of love to redeem or soften even the hardest heart. And male of interest, she defies me, therefore she fascinates me. Is it though? Is it really true? I sort of would not put this as like the number one attraction that I would have as a guy. She's just so annoying. She argues with me all the time. Why? Accustomed to obedience, fear, or adulation, the male love interest is often thrown off kilter by a female main character. But if you're accustomed to obedience, then presumably this male love interest is pretty high in power. Possibly like in a fantasy realm, it's like a princess or priest plus. Female main character who talks back, challenges his authority, or simply isn't impressed by his reputation and power. This novelty is intoxicating. Is it? Underlying fantasy, from his point of view, aimed at the female main character reader, that's a important clarification, her spirit and fire are unique and irresistible to someone jaded by sycophants. Right. But at that point, you would need to be some kind of guy who just is jaded by sycophants, which clearly would not apply to most guys. Although I can a little bit vibe with this. You know, if you put a spin on this, if you're kind of sick of people who are fake, right? And you find this one girl who just like tells it how it is. I wouldn't really call it annoying, but let's say that she's blunt and honest, maybe like somewhat autistically so, then that could be hot. But if she's gonna be just then that's gonna be an I think. So, unexpected light in my darkness, magnetism. Why the male love interest is often burdened by a dark past. But wouldn't this be something that makes you weak? So this is again about emotionality, morally gray actions, or centuries of ennui. The female main character represents hope, goodness, a reason to change, or simply a vibrant spark in his otherwise grim existence. Underlying fantasy, her inherent goodness or spirit is powerful enough to attract and potentially redeem him. She is his anchor or his salvation. So, I mean, these strong guys need to be somewhat emotionally tortured. So you can go some kind of a, I don't know, emotional adventure. Now, personally, I would say that the other person being emotionally boring can be quite appealing. Or maybe you grow to like it more as you get older. Or largely we are like touching on drama here, right? Like the guy has drama and like they like argue, or the guy has kind of some kind of PTSD and she's gotta be her light. Can't the guy be just cool? The protective instinct overdrive, right, often precedes deep love. Why? Something about her triggers an overwhelming urge to protect her, right? But only her? Often to an obsessive degree, right? Touch her and die. Is that hot? Or maybe this is just hot in books. This possessiveness is framed as the depth of his burgeoning feelings. She becomes his responsibility, his priority. Underlying fantasy, being so precious to someone that they would go to any lengths, overturn kingdoms, or defy gods to keep her safe. Well, I can tell you, I would probably not fight a god for you. She is my fated one, the missing piece. Similar to female main character's experience, but from his side, he might have been waiting centuries. Wow, that's a long fucking wait. Or a prophecy foretold her arrival. Her existence completes him or fulfills a crucial part of his destiny. So there's like a large overlap here that the guy was just like guy's objectively well off, but emotionally fucked. And he needs the woman to complete him. This often involves an undeniable physical magical pull. She is essential, irreplaceable, and cosmically linked to him. Her strengths, often hidden or budding, complements challenges mine. Why? While he might be initially drawn to a perceived vulnerability he can protect, he truly comes to desire her when she reveals her own strength, wit, or magical abilities. He doesn't want a doormat, okay? He wants an equal eventually. Someone who can stand by his side or even against him and hold her own. Underlying fantasy would be he respects and desires her for her capabilities, not just her damsel in distress potential. Right. This is kind of better, but you still have the guy start out much, much stronger and kind of become a mentor, but she kind of dreams of equality. I kind of wonder if it's like part commitment fantasy, because if the guy is essentially not whole without you, then I guess that it's very high commitment. But also, it's interesting to point out that there is like a strong desire for the guy to be as powerful as possible, but they also need to be totally fucked in the head and emotionally a wreck for the woman to come in and like complete them. And although they can be strong, they kind of need to, well, possibly need what is the best way to put it? Even if they don't need the woman, they must want the woman a lot. It's also worth pointing out that although it mostly ties to the female lead, is that she also fantasizes over being the hottest of the land, even though the guys might actually do that. In fact, the guys tend to be way more permissive. I mean, that is pretty much self-evident, considering if you're gonna find many people attractive, not just the top guy you can see. But let's just check out the guy. So, how the male protagonist selects, desires his partners. Right. Classic beauty and grace standards. She often described in terms of conventional or fantastical conventional, e.g. elfin beauty. This is an immediate visceral attraction she's pleasing to the eye, visual reward. Underlying fantasy, attaining a most beautiful or highly desirable woman as a mark of his success or status, right? Just be hot, that's it. But also, competence and complementary skills. She's not just a pretty face, she's a skilled healer who patches him up, a vice counselor, a nimble rogue who scouts ahead, or a fellow warrior who can hold the flank. Her skills are useful and make her a valuable partner in his adventures. Underlying fantasy would be having a partner who's not a burden, but an asset, making his journey easier or more successful. Even though there's no expectation that the woman is going to be more powerful, but she could also be at least useful, not a burden. We are really not drawing a sharp line here. Not very high expectations. But also loyalty, support, and unwavering belief. In a tough world, having someone who believes in him unconditionally, supports his decisions, and offers emotional sanctuary is invaluable. She's his rock. Right. Interesting that this might overlap with the romance fantasy. Being admired and validated, having a steadfast emotional anchor, but I'm gonna point out though that this is not about the push and pull and the roller coaster. She's described as the rock, right? And also kindness, nurturing, and goodness. Why, she might represent the softer, more moral side that balances his pragmatic or warrior nature. Her kindness can be a beacon or a source of comfort. Underlying fantasy, finding respite and gentleness in a harsh world, being cared for. That's kind of similar-ish to the previous one. So the guy just wants to fucking win in the world, and this hot chick not only supports him, believes in him, but also kind of nurtures him. So, yeah. But also she doesn't need to be that powerful. She doesn't need to be the Dark Lord. Anyway, even if you get to Gotta Catch Them All harem, each woman offers something different. The shy one, the fiery tsundere, the wise older woman, the bubbly, energetic one. The attraction is to the collection and the validation of being desired by so many different types. Underlying fantasy would be ultimate desirability and power. The fantasy of having multiple devoted partners catering to different needs, desires without jealousy or major conflict. Right. I must really emphasize that part, because even in like a I should say monogamous, that was an odd way to pronounce that, romance, you don't really want drama, right? That's kind of the guy fantasy. So essentially what you would see in these kind of books is that you have the girls being best friends and the guy is like kind of the leader. And if you never read a book like this, you might think it's super smutty, but based on the ones I read, you pretty much have to assume that the main story takes center stage. So the romance is again like a C plot, even though that there might be multiple women there. And the female love interest selects the main guy, or loves that his sheer heroism and prowess. He saved her village, the kingdom. He's brave, skilled in combat, defeats monsters, and overcomes impossible odds. His actions speak louder than words. Right. That is a common aspect, that the guy wins against reality. And the chicks dig that. Underlying fantasy, from her point of view, aimed at the male protagonist, being drawn to and won by a true hero, a figure of strength and capability. But like, kind of like acceptance, validation. So it would suck if you did things that possibly did not even promote your interest necessarily, but in the interest of others, and they did not fucking care, right? That would make you jaded. So I suppose if the guy is acting in somewhat of a pro-social way, or at least pro-social way to at least some, there is some kind of a hope, at least, of reciprocation. If that is not present, that guy might, funnily, turn out to be a female romance fantasy love interest, because they become the brooding hero. Like, okay, no one cares, then I'm just gonna promote my interest, fuck everyone else, right? But then the expectation would be that then he finds that one girl who actually gives a fuck. And second one would be strength, physical, magical, political. It's very similar to the first one. So the guys are just like, I want power, and I want chicks as a secondary. Why? His power offers security and inspires he's a leader, a powerful mage, or an unmatched warrior. This can be inherently attractive. Underlying fantasy, being aligned with power and success. That's a bit of a detour, though. It is kind of a shame that we kind of live in a world where people might not at least feel powerful, because that would be like, they feel meaningful. Because most people are just cogs, right? But also, most importantly, they're just dominated by this brutal dominance hierarchy we have. And some might have it better, but most are pretty screwed. So if I ask you, do you feel powerful? Do you feel like that you have a lot of impact? Because seemingly people wish for that. And I'm not sure they can have it. And even if you had it, you might have to reinterpret the meaning of good. Because you are the guy who competed and won. And now a lot of people just lost out. Or possibly you didn't even compete. You're just born a winner. In effect, that is a very common women romance fantasy, that the guy is the prince. The guy is high status, right? Guy is rich. The guy is whatever. Essentially well off. Now, interestingly, a lot of guy fantasy kind of has the guy starting from near scratch, or at least not much. Because in that way, they get to prove themselves against the world. So they earned it, so to speak. But even then, realistically, you would not be necessarily some kind of person who helps others, but you are the one who defeats them, who makes them lose. And they are not liking you for it. They likely will not call you a hero. They might, well, you might want to spread such stories about you, but if they personally knew you, then they probably would not call you the hero. But let's keep going. The good man beneath the gruff exterior, noble intentions. Why? Even if he is a bit rough, an outlaw, or makes hard choices, she sees him underlying good heart or his commitment to a just cause. She can see the real him. And the underlying fantasy would be her perception allows her to see the hero's true worth, often before others do. Yeah. The way to understand this is that the guy fantasy doesn't tend to have other guys lusting over your chicks. Or at least that would be not hot. While the romance fantasy of women might have the lead interested in the male love interest, essentially, potential love interest, that most women do like. So maybe the prince, and like, I don't know, like 100 women likes the prince, and that actually gives her validation. Like, she is the one who's also gonna go for the prince. What? And of course, the prince selects her, and that is such a validation. So I guess this would be finding a diamond in the rough that others are overlooked. And gratitude leading to affection. A common starting point, he rescued her, and that gratitude blossoms into respect, admiration, and then love. Underlying fantasy, his heroic deeds directly earn him affection. It's the same fucking thing, though. So, power, power, power. And this is power, too. Her perception allows her to see heroes' true worth, often before others do. So, let's say that you're not as popular, and this girl does see that you're still powerful, even though you're maybe not as widely accepted. And the harem ending would be his special kindness, understanding to all of them, right? Why? The male protagonist often has an uncanny ability to be uniquely kind, attentive, or understanding to each individual woman in his orbit, making each feel special despite sharing him. Or he is simply so charismatic, powerful, that it's seen as natural for many to fall for him. Underlying fantasy, the hero is so uniquely powerful, wonderful, that multiple women willingly choose to be with him. Recognizing his exceptional qualities, it's less about their deep individual agency and more about his irresistible magnetism. So you're just so cool that multiple chicks dig you. But I would also point out that harems tend to be even less picky about possible partners. So comically it can be a little bit like, oh yeah, sure, you can come along too. I mean, you're kind of hot enough. And I guess if you're gonna stay by my side and support me, then we can be together till one of us dies. So, romantasy selection often hinges on intense, fated, often conflict-ridden, emotional and magical connections where the partners are uniquely attuned to each other's deepest flaws and strengths, and the desire is to be utterly seen and chosen by a powerful, often dangerous individual. While the guy fantasy would be often leans toward the hero earning or being rewarded with the affection of desirable and often useful supportive partners due to his heroism, strength, and inherent protagonistness. Right. He's just power, right? In harem scenarios, it's about the fantasy of broad, multifaceted appeal. So that is about it. Tell me, guys, what you guys think about the topic, and which one would you pick? Which one is the superior one? I asked Gemini. Of course, this is highly subjective, but I'm forcing it to answer. And if you want fantasy story where the romantic relationship itself is the star, with all its emotional intensity, angst, and profound connection being the primary draw, I'm picking romantasy. That's female romance fantasy. It's specifically engineered for that. It definitely has more romance in it. Unless you're romantic toward, like, winning against the world. I mean, you're romantic toward. And I gotta say, a 500-year-old Faelord obsessed with a 19-year-old is pretty damn romantic.